The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog's giving away $15 million at WrestleMania 5. Sign the promo code SGPN to go on your first time deposit offer. As far as bonus cash on Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm has the best AI picks and projections, and the football models are about to go live. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com, rhythmsportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Tuesday night, roughly 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time on July 30th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this podcast. Should be a fun episode because it's time to get into the third round, or in other words, the round of 16 in the Olympics for the men's side. So we're going to cover a lot of matches in this episode. A point is, though, it's been a pretty fun tournament. Hopefully you've been enjoying it. The only issue is actually finding the coverage, which I think is mostly on Peacock. But either way, point is the matches have been competitive. They've been entertaining, and hopefully you've been enjoying it and making some money in the process. And before we get into any of the actual recap for the second round, I want to remind you once again that you should like, subscribe on YouTube. Also, reminder, don't forget you can support the show on Spotify or Apple by rating and reviewing. So you can leave your support or show support in a variety of ways. But no matter how you are consuming the podcast, don't forget to leave some feedback and to leave a either like, subscribe, or once again, leave a review. Also, a reminder, check out the SGPN merch store. We'll have a lot of great tennis gambling podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. High quality, very affordable. So I recommend you getting yourself something there. A reminder, we also do have some featured shows for the week. And the featured show is actually the Mothership Show, the Sports Gambling Podcast, which just launched their 32 NFL team previews for the upcoming season. And as a bonus, each team preview has a code word. Submit the 32 code word phrase, and you could be the lucky winner who gets a $500 NFL Circa future bet. Plus, a reminder, subscribe to get your podcast, and also don't forget to download the SGPN app. Time to get into the actual recap for the second round of the Olympics. Starting off with the lock and dog picks. The lock was good as we had Nadal under for his team total at 8.5 to -120. He was down 6-1, 4-0. Then, because he's Nadal, he had to make it interesting because he never goes away quietly. But Djokovic eventually regained control of the second set, but he won comfortably. He won 9 of the first 10 games. It was really never in doubt. Djokovic killed him, and we picked up a nice winner there. Bad scheduling spot for Nadal, having played 2.5 hours the day prior against Fucsovics. Djokovic is better at this stage in their careers, and he is definitely the more rested guy after having a day off the day prior and only playing 57 minutes in the first round against Ebden. Great spot for him. He dominated. Nice, easy win there. For the dog, though, picked up a loss, though. Way to Wawrinka on the money line against Papiron. Did not work out at even money, as Wawrinka ended up playing decently. The issue was he just could not return to save his life. I believe he had no break points in the entire match. It was competitive both sets, but unfortunately, when you don't have any breaks or any break opportunities, you're not going to win most of the time, and Wawrinka did end up losing there. So picked up a loss with the dog. Had some plays with Washington. Those did not go well either. I'll recap those a bit more in depth when we get into the quarterfinal episode for Washington. Going to stick with the Olympics only for the actual content here. But overall, still with the lock, though, felt very good about Nadal getting destroyed, and Nadal did. Now, as Brian's mentioning, Nadal's actually done pretty well in doubles, as him and Alcaraz did win a 3-set marathon today. So we'll see how they do moving forward. But Nadal was also busy doing doubles. Alcaraz has been playing a bunch of tennis. You can argue that in the future for Alcaraz, he might be exhausted, just having to alternate singles and doubles matches. But Nadal has looked pretty good in doubles with Alcaraz. Singles, though, not so much. And we ended up getting the job done there with the lock. So either way, time to move on to the actual recap for the second round. Starting off with the, once again, Djokovic burying Nadal. Safulin ended up beating Echeverry. That was my runner-up for the dog, which unfortunately I did not pick. I thought Safulin was alive to win it against Echeverry. Thought it looked very good against Tabilo in the first round. Did like the plus 2.5 games as well, at plus money that got there, as you had the tale of two sets because it was 6-0 in the first set for Safulin, followed by 7-6. But either way, the point is that Echeverry did lose, and Safulin was drastically mispriced as he got the job done in that one. His reward, Alcaraz. So good luck to Safulin. We'll see how he does in the third round. Cerundolo continues to win after winning Umag and showing really no signs of slowing down. Ended up beating Humbert in a very fun competitive matchup there in 3. Did like him minus the spread. I think it was -1 at -120, and he got there in 3 against Humbert. Ruud had a bit of a war there against Vavasori as he ended up winning in 3. Did lose the first set. Vavasori. He's kind of a weird serve and volley guy on clay. He was the last second fill-in for Sinner. It's a win for Ruud. Was it a good win? No, because Vavasori should not be winning a set off Ruud. But either way, point is Ruud did manage to rally, and he got the job done in 3 sets. Kepfer beat Arnaldi in 3. I like Arnaldi, but he's still too inconsistent for me, and as a result, ended up seeing him lose to Kepfer in 3, who was fresh off of the 3-set all-breakers win against Raonic in the first round. Evans shouldn't have bothered showing up, as he ended up getting destroyed by Tsitsipas, 6-1, 6-2. Great performance by Tsitsipas. We'll see how he does in the next round. Baez had a marathon against Hassan. That was a very fun match. Baez did win that one in a final set breaker, so a good win for him. And you saw Alcaraz beat Griekspoor, tail of 2 sets, 6-1, 7-6. Seemed a little bit compromised. I don't want to say injured, but he seemed a little bit iffy at times, Alcaraz, but he got the job done kind of exactly how I thought the match would play out. I thought that the spread at 5.5 was going to be very close, and I thought it'd be a very interesting matchup, and that's exactly what happened, as he ended up landing 6, but Alcaraz did win, so nice job by him. As for Tuesday, also pretty interesting because I believe Alcaraz faced off against Griekspoor again in doubles, I think. So it was pretty interesting seeing them face off head-to-head in both singles and doubles in back-to-back days. For the Tuesday card, we had Fritz beating Draper in 3. That got their rinse and repeat from their matchup earlier this year in Munich, I believe, where that went 3 sets and Fritz did win. Same thing, as Fritz got the job done in 3. Musetti keeps winning, as he ended up beating Navone in straight sets there. Moving on into the other matches, Felix beat Martera 6-0, 6-1. Martera was out to lunch mentally, I guess. Zverev did beat Malkic in straight sets. Good win there. Wawrinka got buried. Paul beat Mensik. We did like Paul in that one. Thought that minus 175 was too cheap for the money line. We do like Mensik a lot as a player, but the price was way off and Paul was in good form, so I didn't exactly like the actual price. And I believe Paul ended up exploding to like minus 250, minus 2 something. So point is, we ended up actually having a pretty solid, I'd say, value play on Paul, because that line exploded, and you ended up seeing Paul win comfortably, only dropping 4 games. Struff ended up beating the last second replacement for de Minaur in the first round, then he dropped out of the event as Moutet got a walkover in the second round. I believe he's the only French player left in any of the events, whether it involves singles, doubles, or the women's singles. So point is, Moutet is going to try to make some noise moving forward, and Medvedev beat Offner because Offner is not very good. Not really any drama. Fritz and Draper was the only match on Tuesday that went to 3 sets. So everything else is pretty straightforward. Not much drama. For the women's side, Goff got upset by Vekic. I think that was basically it. Kerber's still alive, so good for her, as she is about to retire, but she's going to see how long she can go, and she is still alive in the event, so good for her. Nothing else really recap. Paolini did lose, though, which was kind of surprising. So you ended up seeing the French Open runner-up lose in the second round. Not much else. Navarro lost. Swiatek won. Didn't cover, but still won. And Sakari lost again. What else is new? Anyway, time to get into the actual preview for the third round. Before into that, do want to remember once again that we are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, because they just launched their Underdog Streaks. Hit your first 2 pick'em entries, and then go streaking. If you can get an 11-0 run, you can win 1,000 times your money. Plus, WrestleMania is alive with $15 million in prizes. United specials and boosts on all flex entries. I'll probably end up using something with Giannis points in that upcoming game against Australia. They have Olympic options for Underdog, so I recommend checking that out as well. Use promo code SGPN to claim your special pick and first deposit offer as far as a bonus cash on Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by OddsJam. OddsJam is your one-stop shop for beating the sportsbooks. OddsJam uses millions of data points from across every U.S. and Canadian sportsbook to show the best value plays for your money. Their line shopping tool allows you to find the best price for any bet that you want across countless sportsbooks, not just DraftKings and FanDuel, but also offshore books like BetOnline, Bovada, Cut, etc. Their arbitrage tool is also useful because it helps you find opportunities where you can bet both sides of the same prop, different sportsbooks, to guarantee yourself a positive ROI. Their new fantasy tool features the highest EV plays relative to the sportsbook's odds, allowing you to crush sites like Underdog Fantasy. They have a tool for finding the best sign of bonuses. If you're interested in trying out OddsJam, you can get a 7-day free trial by going to the link below, and by using the promo code SGPN. You get 35% off your first month of the subscription. OddsJam.com, promo code SGPN. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the second round. Time to get into the third round, or the round of 16. So I think for this one, we actually are going to cover all the matches, because why not? But getting into the first match on the actual card, you have what should be an interesting one, because you have a matchup between Baez and Tsitsipas. Now, Baez is fresh off of a marathon against a relative unknown player, but he got the job done against Hassan. Tsitsipas came off of an ass-kicking, as he was able to destroy Evans Evans has been involved in a pretty solid doubles run, though, with Murray. I think the last match he played had to fight off 5 match points, so he might have been exhausted. Point is, though, Tsitsipas dominated after not looking that great against Bergs in the first round. For the money line, though, Tsitsipas is minus 400, Baez is plus 320. For the game spread, Tsitsipas minus 4.5, Baez plus 4.5. Over-under for games is set at 20.5. For the set wagering, Tsitsipas in straight sets is minus 135. Baez to win ace sets plus 105. And the over 2.5 sets is at plus 160. Now, looking at the head-to-head between them, you have seen Tsitsipas win both meetings, but neither of them were in straight sets. Faced off in Madrid last year, and that was the only clay meeting, and that did go to 3 sets. Tsitsipas did win. And as for the other meeting, Australia in 2022, and Tsitsipas did win that 1 in 4. They did alternate the first 2 sets in breakers, though, so the match was competitive, but Tsitsipas got the job done. Now, Baez in this event looked fine. Had the marathon loss to Gaston in Kitzbühel, then he beat Montero in straight sets and beat Hassan in 3. It really comes down to what Tsitsipas you expect, because in the first round, he was very vulnerable against Bergs, and if that's the one that shows up, Baez could potentially beat him, but he's at least going to win a set. If Tsitsipas looks as good as he did in the second round, then he should dominate, because I do think that he is the better player out of these compared to these two. I think I am going to win the Tsitsipas here, probably in straight sets. I do think that Baez's marathon match against Hassan might be good, but he's a relative unknown player. And I do think that's not exactly the greatest looking win for him. Tsitsipas, though, had basically a bye in the second round, and I do think his top spin can give Baez problems based on his short stature. So I do think that Baez might have to hit a couple of balls by his head, and as a result, that might result in him taking the back foot and trying to be a bit defensive in these rallies. But Tsitsipas, we know, is a better server. And as long as Tsitsipas' return game is not totally atrocious, he should find some breakpoint chances in this matchup. I think I am going to lean to the straight sets win for Tsitsipas. I know we gave him out to win the quarter, which might have surprised some people, but I think he's been in pretty solid form so far in the event, and we know he's had some success in the French Open in years past. So with his familiarity on the courts here, I do think that he should be able to look sharp. Give me Tsitsipas minus 1.5 sets at minus 135. Maybe a breaker in there, but I do think that he's the better server, and that might be enough to get the job done in this matchup. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Paul taking on Moutet. Moutet, I said before, had a walkover as Struff ended up dropping out, but Paul's the favorite here by a decent amount. Paul's minus 540. Moutet is around plus 430. For the actual game spread here, you have minus 5.5 for Paul, plus 5.5 for Moutet. The over-under for games is 20.5, and the over 2.5 sets in this matchup is plus 160. Paul in straight sets, by the way, is minus 140. Moutet to win a set is plus 110. Now, Paul was really, really dominant against a Mensik that was in very good form, that we actually backed for the lock in the first round against Shevchenko. But this line feels so disrespectful to me. And the fact that Moutet is at home, I think definitely might play a factor here. Now, Moutet had a marathon against Nagal, so you can argue that wasn't exactly the best showing for him in the first round. But I do think Paul's going to win. Do I think 5.5 is too many games? Probably. I think Moutet is interesting enough, and I think that he is, I'd say, unorthodox enough to take Paul out of his comfort zone, and I do think that potentially Moutet can make it interesting. The pricing, like he's going to get absolutely destroyed, I wouldn't go that far. I think Moutet is, once again, a solid clay player. We saw him make a respectable run there in the French Open before losing to Sinner. Didn't win a set, though, in that one. Won the first set before getting killed in 4. Point is, I do think that he can keep this match somewhat competitive. I'm not picking him to win, but I think that Paul being 5.5 feels like an overreaction a bit to the last match against Mensik. I think Moutet can keep it interesting. 5.5 is a ton. I know it's at minus 137, but if Moutet loses 6-4, 6-3, that's a pretty straightforward win for Paul, and he's not covering. So I think I'm going to go with the home country guy, the final French tennis player left in the field. Give me Moutet plus 5.5. I'm not going to take him to win, but I do think he can make it interesting. Give me the plus 5.5 in this matchup. Moving on to the next match between Fritz and Musetti, which is a rematch of the Wimbledon quarterfinal. Point is, though, Musetti is a slight favorite, about minus 125. You see Fritz at about even money. For the actual spread here, you have minus 1. You have minus a half a game for Musetti. You have plus a half for Fritz. The over-under is at 22.5 for the set wagering. It's going to be a nice plus money play on Musetti. Musetti to win in straight sets is plus 200. First to win in straight sets is plus 250. And the over 2.5 sets is around plus 120, plus 125. So Musetti, we know, is in great form. Yes, he did end up losing the final in Umag, but there's been no ill effects of fatigue. as he was able to win in straight sets against Monfils and straight sets against Navone. So he's been fine so far in the event. Fritz had a 3-setter against Draper. So no days off, actually, but for him, because he had to play on Tuesday, and this match is going to be on Wednesday. So you can argue fatigue could be an issue, but the point is that Fritz has been fine. Ended up beating Bublik in the first round, ended up beating Draper in 3. Musetti's been great. He's won 14 of his last 17 matches, and he did beat Fritz in Wimbledon, and he also beat him in Monte Carlo back in April earlier this year on clay in straight sets. I'm picking Musetti. I know I picked Fritz to win the quarter. The main reason why I was concerned about the durability or the overall fatigue of Musetti, but he's answered every question. He also played on Monday, so he actually had a day off to work with for Tuesday, which I think was going to benefit him in the spot, where Musetti randomly has the rest advantage for this matchup because Fritz played on Tuesday. So I do think that Musetti's going to win. He's the better clay player. He's in great form, arguably the best form of his entire career. And Fritz, I do think, is a solid clay player, but the fact that Musetti beat him earlier this year in straight sets on clay, and the fact that he beat him in Wimbledon, tells me that Musetti might have some confidence, some added confidence against Fritz, and I do think that Fritz looked fine against Draper, but Musetti's another animal. I think that Musetti's going to win, so give me Musetti on the money line in this one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Alcaraz taking on Safiullin. Alcaraz about -6, +6 for Safiullin. You can probably find 6.5 somewhere. For the money line, -2,500 for Alcaraz, +1,300 for Safiullin. The over/unders at 18.5 games. For the set wagering, Safiullin win a set is a +325. Alcaraz in straight sets is -450, and the over/under sets is 2.5. The under is -500. The over is +350. Now, Alcaraz has had to play a lot of tennis. Had to play against Griekspoor twice. Had a competitive match there that went to a breaker in the second set, and he also had to go to a decider in doubles against Griekspoor as well. Faced off one time in the careers, though. Faced off last year in Paris, so a hard court, and Safiullin did beat him in straight sets. This is on clay, though. Alcaraz has been fine in the event. Beat Habib pretty comfortably, ended up beating Griekspoor in one competitive set and one easy set. Safiullin, though, ended up beating Echeverry in straight sets and Tabilo in straight sets. I think 6 is too many. I feel like it's a little bit large to me. I think Safullin's been in good form, and I do think that with Alcaraz playing so much tennis, fatigue could be an issue. He seemed to be struggling a bit physically with, I think it was his leg at times. I don't think he's going to drop out or anything, but I think that Safiullin can keep it interesting. He's got firepower. If he can limit the unforced errors, I do think he's in line for a pretty respectable showing here. I'm not saying he's going to win. Do I think Alcaraz is going to win comfortably? He could, obviously, but 6 games feels massive to me. I'm not going to take the 6 with Alcaraz. I think I'm going to lean to the dog, actually. I think that Safiullin has been in very good form, and he's got the firepower to maybe push Alcaraz around at times. And I do think with that being the case, he could get the job done by losing respectably. Kind of like what I said about the Moutet match against Paul. Losing and getting blown out are two different things. I think Safiullin can lose, once again, 6-3, 6-4, and he ends up covering. But 6 feels like a bit of a disrespectful line to me, based on Safullin's form so far in this event. I'm going to take the games here. Give me Safiullin plus the 6 at about even money. You can probably find 6.5 once again at maybe like a -135, -140 price. That's expecting Alcaraz to bury him. I don't see that happening. Give me Safiullin plus the games in that one. Moving on to the next matchup, you have probably the match of the day. You have Safiullin taking, not Safiullin, sorry, you have Cerundolo taking on Ruud. Ruud is around -205 on the money line. You have Cerundolo at +175. For the game spread, you have -3 for Ruud and +3 for Cerundolo. Over/under 22.5 games, slightly juiced to the under there. If you want to go for set wagering, though, the over 2.5 sets is +130. Cerundolo to win a set is -150. Ruud to win in straight sets is +120, and Cerundolo to win in straight sets is +400. Now, it might surprise you, but Cerundolo has actually been very good against Ruud in the head-to-head. Cerundolo is currently 3-2 lifetime, and he's won 3 of the last 4 meetings. So he has actually been very good in this overall head-to-head, and Cerundolo has been in great form, obviously winning in Umag and winning in 3 against Humbert in an absolute war in his last match, and he beat Boris Vera in Boris Vera, which is basically a bye, 6-2, 6-1. Point is, though, like Musetti, fatigue has not been an issue for him after Umag. Luckily, though, he did play against Humbert on Monday, so he had the day off on Tuesday, which should help. Same with Ruud. But I'm mentioning it specifically for Cerundolo because he went through a full Umag slate and then had to play immediately with no days off in the Olympics. So I do think the day off will help him. Now, 3 games I do think feels a bit large for Ruud in this matchup, especially based on the head-to-head numbers, where Cerundolo has actually beaten Ruud on clay. He's won 3 of the last 4 meetings. I think he's in line for a good showing here. Now, Ruud ended up going 3 against Vavasori. I'll put it this way. I'm a lot more concerned about Ruud's 3-set win than Cerundolo's 3-set win, because Humbert's still a good player. Humbert's pretty solid on clay, and he is French, so of course he has the home country advantage. Vavasori was a last-second fill-in who had a pretty competitive match in the first round. I want to actually pull up who Vavasori played. The point is, though, Ruud didn't exactly look that good in the second round, and Cerundolo's had his number. If Cerundolo's forehand can dictate play like it has over the last week or so, I think he could win. And I think Ruud is a guy that I stayed away from in the quarters because I didn't fully trust him. But when you go 3 sets against Martinez, Vavasori didn't, he won, and then he ended up going 3 sets against Ruud. I think Ruud should have looked sharper, and he didn't. So I think with that being the case, and with the head-to-head numbers, I think I'm going to lean to Cerundolo here. Kind of similar to the just overall pricing that I mentioned for some of the other guys that I think have value as dogs. Maybe not so much for this match because this price is cheaper. Same way with Mutet or with, for example, Safulin. Sometimes the odds just feel a bit disrespectful. And with Cerundolo's recent form, with Ruud struggling against Vavasori, and with head-to-head numbers with Cerundolo winning 3 of the last 4 meetings, I think there's some value on Cerundolo here. So I'm going to go with the dog here. I think he can maybe win the match. I don't mind plus 175. Give me the games, though, and I am going to also go with the over 2.5 sets. Might be a marathon, but I do think that Safulin is, once again, disrespected by getting 6 games. I think that Cerundolo is disrespected by getting 3 games. And I think plus 175 is pretty similar to the Safulin opinion that I had against Echeverry, where they're just expecting this guy to lose, and I think that he's in too good of a form to be priced this way. And it worked out for Safulin in the second round. So give me Cerundolo to get the job done in this one. Moving on to the next match on the card. You have a matchup that I believe I have no lines on because Medvedev did play today. I want to quickly see if I can find the odds on that one. Do I have lines on it? I have money lines. Okay, so Medvedev's minus 200. Felix is around plus 163. Medvedev has owned Felix in their careers, as Medvedev is currently a casual 7-0. He's 7-0 against Felix. However, none of the meetings were on clay. So I have to at least mention that because Felix is very comfortable on clay. It has been good in this event as he beat, once again, Marter, only dropping 1 game in the second round, and he beat Giron, only dropping 5 games. Medvedev, though, looked very good against Offner, and he looked very good against Ichikata. So the point is, do I think Felix can actually get the job done in this matchup? It might be interesting. Maybe it goes 3. Maybe this is the spot where Felix finally beats this guy because it's on clay, which is, I'd say, documented as being Medvedev's worst surface. Now, I do think you're looking at a spot where Medvedev, I would still pick to win because I kind of need to see Felix pull this off. When one guy owns you 7-0, I just have a hard time picking you to actually win the match. But I think it's going to be competitive. I wouldn't mind the over 2.5 sets here. Felix has been in good form. So is Medvedev. So maybe you get a clash, I'd say overall clashing of 2 guys that are in very good form. I don't mind the over 2.5 sets. I would probably lean to Felix plus the games. But I do think you're going to see Medvedev potentially win a marathon here. But I think that Felix is going to probably lose again. If he wins, would I be shocked? No. But I do think that Medvedev, who has also won the last 3 meetings in straight sets, but it's all on hard court. So it's tough to fully factor in the head-to-head when you're playing on a new surface, but I think that Felix, until he actually gets past the mental block of Medvedev, I'm not going to pick him to win, but I think he can keep it close. Give me the over, and give me the over 2.5 sets in this one. Last match for the actual round of 16, you have Papirin taking on Zverev. Zverev's minus 900. Papirin is plus 600. For the game spread, minus 4.5 for Zverev, plus 4.5 for Papirin. For the over-under in games, 20.5. For the actual over-under, you have the over 2.5 sets at plus 220. Zverev in straight sets, that's for the over. For the straight sets, Zverev is minus 225 in straight sets. Papirin to win a set is plus 185. Now, Zverev's been fine so far in the event. He's not dropped the set yet. He looked pretty good in his last match that he played. Had a 7-5 in there, but he was able to beat Makic, who I think is in pretty good form in straight sets, and he beat Munar 6-2, 6-2. Papirin beat Wawrinka in straight sets, and he beat Jari in straight sets, mainly because of his good serve, as he did not face a break point in the entire second round. However, Zverev has done well in the head-to-head. 2 meetings on hard court. They are dated, though, as both meetings were in 2019 and 2018. Zverev did win both of them in straight sets. So Zverev, we know, is the better clay player. He made the French Open final. Papiron's been fine, though, but it's really tough to find value on this matchup. I just think Zverev's going to win, and I think Papiron's probably going to end up losing by at least a break in both sets. So I guess the question is, do I think I'm going to get a 7-5 in there? And I think based on just assuming that's not going to happen, I think I have to lean to the under at 20.5. I think Zverev should win at least one set, 6-3, give or take. And with that being the case, that opens up some leeway for the under. But I think for the sake of this, the question is, can Zverev generate enough constant pressure to Papiron service games? I think he can. We know Zverev is a very good returner, and we know that he's very steady, which is a problem for Papiron because his unforced error count tends to get up there against pretty solid opposition. I am going to go with Zverev in straight sets, and I think that he's going to win probably 6-3, 6-3, give or take. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I'm not going to overreact to Papiron having a great service match overall performance against Wawrinka. I think Zverev gives him more of a threat, and I think that Zverev's serve should be good enough against Papiron to get the job done. So I am going to go with the under 20.5 games as my main pick for that one. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual episode. Didn't I miss a lock and dog from last round? I don't know what you're referring to. I went through the lock and dog picks for the second round. We had Nadal, for example, for the team total under. I did have lock and dog picks for Washington, which I did not recap. I'm going to save those for the Washington quarterfinal episode. They were not good. Spoiler. The point is I'm going to save those for the Washington episode. Point is that's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual matches in the third round. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But before I get to that, I do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Rhythm, because if you're not checking out the AI picks and props from Rhythm, you're missing out. They just predicted a bunch of winners for the 3M Open in golf, and their football models are about to drop. You can even customize your own betting models easily with Rhythm's tools. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampodcast.com, rhythmsportscampodcast.com/RITHMM. We're also brought to you by Circuit Survivor and Circuit Millions. Circuit Sports is back with Circuit Survivor and Circuit Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Imagine the regret you'll feel if you win your office pool and you don't enter Circuit Survivor. Don't have a trip booked out for Las Vegas for football? Ultimate Contest Weekend's a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean. Enjoy some of the involvement in the World's Best Sportsbook from August 22nd through the 24th. Use promo code SGP15 to save 15% off your hotel room for sign-up weekend. Sign up in person at Circuit Sports between now and September 7th and use a proxy. Play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com. You $50 with promo code SGP. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing every match for the round of 16 in the Olympics. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. Starting off with the lock, I think I am actually going to go back to the matchup between Ruud and Cerundolo. I found a 3.5, which feels very disrespectful to me. Give me Cerundolo plus the 3.5 at -127. He's playing phenomenal tennis. Ruud did not look great in his last match against Vavasori, and Cerundolo has won 6 straight. I think he's in great form. He also had a day off on Tuesday, which is big for him, for fatigue-wise, for stamina-wise, because he had to go through Umag, and then he had to immediately go to France to play in the Olympics. He had an off day, which I think should help him, I'd say, recover, and I do think his head-to-head numbers are too good against Ruud to pass up on. He's 3-2. Head-to-head against Ruud, 3-1 in the last 4 meetings. He's covered the spread in 4 straight head-to-head meetings. I think he's in line for a very respectable showing here, and I think this match could be a marathon, but Cerundolo has been very good in the head-to-head, and Ruud has not looked that dominant so far in this event. But anytime you have a guy that's won 6 straight, that's been coasting so far, and a guy that has even covered this line of losing to Ruud in Rome. They played on clay last year. Ruud did win in straight sets, but it was 7-6, 6-4. So Cerundolo is still covered. The point is, I do think that you're looking at a guy who has given Ruud some problems. He's been in great form, and I do think Ruud, with his deep return position, might struggle if you're going to see Cerundolo's forehand on point, like it has been for the last week. I like the plus 3.5. He can still lose as long as it's close. Give me a close matchup, and I'll play the safe option with that. Give me Cerundolo plus the 3.5 games at -127 as my lock. I believe that was on, I'm trying to remember which book that was on. I'm pretty sure that was on DraftKings, I think. It was either FanDuel or DraftKings, but that was definitely the line that I found. Or was it BetMGM? I'm trying to remember. It was one of those. It might have been BetMGM. Point is, that was where I found it, and I am going to go with that as my lock. For my dog, I'm going to once again back a guy from Umag. I'm going to go with Musetti, but I'm going to go with an alt game spread. Give me Musetti, -1.5 games at even money against Fritz. Musetti has won 14 of his last 17 matches. So if you're doing the math, that means he's 14-3. He's 2-0 against Fritz so far this year. Beat him in Wimbledon on what's arguably Fritz's best surface, and he was able to win that one in the quarterfinals. And he beat him in Monte Carlo earlier this year on clay in straight sets back in April. So they have faced off on clay. Musetti won, faced off on one of Fritz's preferred surface. Musetti still won. And I do think with that being the case, Musetti is still in great form. He's looked very good so far in the event, beating Navone in straight sets and beating Monfils in straight sets. Besides the, I'd say, tie-break loss in the final set to Cerundolo, he's been just on another level. And Fritz has been fine. Dropped the set to Draper, though, on Tuesday. So he has to play again. Fatigue could be an issue in the second set, maybe. But based on Musetti's recent form, I think he can win a set in a blowout fashion, and that might give you some leeway. But I think 1.5 games at even money for a guy that has a good record head-to-head against Fritz this year, and a guy that we know is in great form on clay, I think it's a good price, so I am going to go with that as my dog. So once again, I see Brian mentioning to me, by the way, that for the Cerundolo play, he has minus 120 on ESPN bet. So I'm actually going to fix that right now. Thank you, Brian, for telling me. So the updated lock is going to be Cerundolo plus 3.5 games at minus 120 for the better price against Rude. And my dog's going to be on Musetti minus 1.5 games at plus 100. That one was on Bet Rivers that I remember. So that's going to be my play for the dog. A reminder back once again for the quarterfinals of both the Olympics and for Washington. I believe the order will be Washington next, I think. Not totally sure. Point is, though, we have some tennis content for the rest of the week. Until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the WNBA show. And find me on the MLB show as well. Actually, just finished posting the episode for the Wednesday games. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.